So we are now going to move into talking about adapting Amaze and other resources to support youth with a variety of disabilities. So I have the pleasure of introducing Lexie, who is our guest speaker tonight. Lexie Zimbelman, she, her pronouns, has a Master's of Arts in International Development with a certificate in Global Health Affairs, focusing on maternal and child health from the Corbel School of International Studies at the University of Denver. Lexie has worked in the field of public health for 12 years, her experience includes providing maternal and child health, sexual health, and malnutrition programming, both international and domestically. She has 8 years experience working with U.S. school districts as a sexual health educator and manager. Lexie has worked as a healthcare advocate for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, also known as IDD, and currently works with students with IDD at Portland Public High Schools in Oregon. She supports teachers with training content, coaching, and co-teaching sex ed for both traditional classrooms and self-contained classrooms. If all of you can just give a warm welcome to Lexie Zimbelman. We're so excited to have you here and for you to share the best practices with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I also will say, following that panel is going to be a tough thing to do. So thank you so much for having me. And to the folks who just shared, it's very exciting. So today I'm going to be presenting content. I have to start out with this delightful slide. My position is funded by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So what I'm sharing today does not necessarily represent their views, but my own. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm a little ambitious, so hopefully we can get through it. So I'm going to start with, why do we adapt our content for students with learning, developmental, and physical disabilities? I think we all know that, but I just want to sort of ground us in that. What is universal design for learning, or what we also call UDL? How can we use it to adapt the content that we're using in our classrooms? And then we're going to start talking about some concrete ways to start adapting your practices starting today. And then finally, I'm going to share some examples of Amaze videos that I personally use in my classes with my students, and where I've used them within my sexual health lessons, just to give you a sense of what we cover and when we cover it. And then finally, I'm just gonna, our wonderful colleague here, Shirley, is going to share at the very end a couple pages of resources that I have for you. So what I also want to do is talk about some acknowledgements. When it comes to sexual health, we have never arrived, right? We always have more work to do. There's always more learning to do. And we work in a field that's always changing, right? And so I think because it is always changing and it's static, we have to give ourselves permission to make mistakes and to grow when we make those mistakes. And I might make some mistakes today. So I just want to preface with that. And I absolutely welcome feedback and insight from folks if I do make mistakes, because I also want to continue to grow and to improve. And finally, everyone has the right to a healthy, safe, and satisfying relationship. And so in addition to these acknowledgements, I want to share where my knowledge has come from. So I've worked with adults with disabilities in a group home setting. I've also co-taught sexual health with high schoolers with disabilities. And so I'm presenting content to you today that I wish had been available to me a few years ago when I started to do this work. And so I'm trying to share stuff with you that I have found very helpful, and I hope you also can find helpful. And this is just a sliver of the information that's out there. And it's being presented to you based on my personal experience. And that lens that I come to you with is a white, cis, asexual, or ace woman who does not have visible disabilities. So I hope that that throughout this presentation, I am going to ask for some participation from you, and I hope that you feel comfortable and safe to share your experiences and some of your ideas as well. So we're going to kick it off with a little poll. And hopefully this will start for folks. And for folks who are unable to see it, I'll just read the options to you. So this is to better understand who is in our audience. So the options are: I have no experience working with youth with IDD. I have less than a year of experience working with youth with IDD. I have 2 to 5 years of experience. I have 5 or more years of experience, or I am a person with an intellectual and/or developmental disability. So please, the numbers are flowing in. Thank you so much for participating in this. So we'll close it in another maybe 10 seconds, if that's okay. Okay. All right, and I'm going to close it. That's okay. Poll ended. Thank you so much. So if we can share the results with folks, it looks like we've got a really even spread, which makes me so excited, because it sounds like we have folks coming here who are just getting started and wanting to learn more. But also, I'm hoping I'm going to look to you folks 2 years and longer to hopefully share some of your experience as well when we're talking about this, and anything that's kind of worked for you as well in the classroom or at schools. Okay, so let's move to why do we need to make our content more accessible? So a 2019 report from the National Center for Learning Disabilities has stated that 1 in 5 children in the US have a learning disability. So this includes a few different things. This includes things like I always mess this word up, I apologize. Dyscalculia. So that impacts the understanding of numbers and learning different math facts. Dysgraphia, which impacts handwriting and fine motor skills. So typically motor skills that are small and are done with hands. Dyslexia. So that also impacts reading and speech-based processing. It includes nonverbal learning disabilities and oral and written language disorders. What it does not include, which we're starting to see many more people diagnosed with this, is ADHD. And it doesn't include dyspraxia, which is related to movement, coordination, and different language skills, and other executive functioning disorders. So we also know that our students with developmental disabilities can experience physical disabilities. And because the definition of a physical disability is so variable within the healthcare setting, chronic versus acute, or whether that's categorized, what is categorized as a disability. I do have one stat for you. It's that the CDC has found that 1 in 4 kids aged 12 to 17 has what they call, quote unquote, special healthcare needs. So the number of youth with multiple disabilities, though, starts hovering at about 17%. You see a lot of people with multiple disabilities, not just one. And so it's very complex for each person. Finally, we have this 17%. So according to the CDC, youth age 3 to 17, about 1 in 6 of them have a developmental disability. So what this all goes to say, all of these juicy statistics, what it really boils down to is that when you're adapting your content, you're adapting it for youth that have disabilities that you can see, disabilities you can't see, and a lot of youth that haven't been diagnosed or have a formal diagnosis can really benefit from you adapting your content. And then finally, let's not forget our wonderful English language learners. They also benefit immensely from a lot of the tips and tricks that we're going to be talking about as well. So the first thing we're going to talk about is universal design for learning. What does this mean? What does this boil down to? It's that we are just simply making content accessible to all learners, which can be very daunting. So what I'm going to do is talk about 4 components that go into UDL. And you can see them here: goals, instructional materials, teaching methods and classroom management, and assessments. And what this is built on is the assumption that every classroom is going to have variability, right? You're not going to go in and teach this content in one way to one group of people, to one type of person, okay? So I'm going to talk about each of these components and some different ideas and ways that you can adapt content. And this is also where I'm going to welcome some folks to chime in the chat with some potential ideas that they might have to contribute to these components as well. So we'll start with goals. That's our first slide. So goals can often be laid out in a one-size-fits-all mentality, right? For an entire classroom of students. We're going to have one goal and the entire class is going to meet that goal. Goals dictate how something is going to be met or how it must be met, and it's often really rigid in a very, very rigid way. So this forces our students to conform to the one way that we have listed for them. And if they can't complete it in that one way, then they're never going to meet the goal, which I'm sure you can imagine how defeating that feels, to not even have the opportunity to try and reach a goal before you've started. Yes, exactly. So we are setting them up to fail, correct? Thank you, Wendy. So one way that we can approach goals is to create them with our students, create the goal with the student in mind, and embrace the different ways that they can demonstrate their understanding and their different masteries. So when you write a goal with a student, one way you can start this off is to phrase it something like, the student will learn X, Y, Z and demonstrate their understanding of said topic. So in this specific sentence, the word demonstrate really leaves the door open for flexibility and for you to adapt it to that student. And this can mean very different things for different students. The next piece that we pay attention to is instructional materials. So what are instructional materials? It's anything that we're using in our class to deliver our content. It's our digital materials, our in-person materials, anything that we're using to aid in the learning of content. So we can use videos to present content. We all know not everyone thrives with lectures, but make sure that if you're showing your videos that you're viewing them first and continuing to use your lens of accessibility. Just showing a video does not check the box, right? We need to view it with our students in mind and then take note of things that might be hard for them to understand or could be activating for them. So another thing is graphic novels. Are there any graphic novels or comics that are out there that are going to depict your lesson content for you? And so this can be a little tough to find. They're difficult to find, but when you do find them, these different examples are really fabulous. And it's wonderful because students can see themselves in the content that you're showing and the stories that they're reading, and the experiences that the people in these graphic novels are experiencing and having. And then think about your slides that you're showing in class. Are you showing your audience in those slides? Are youth showing up in this and not in a tokenizing way, right? Like, are we using these different images in a way that's really inclusive and is showing people having fun? It's not, yeah, tokenizing, I guess, is just the thing that I want it to boil down to. We do not want to tokenize our students. And then, you know, how do we choose content that makes sure that, or are we choosing content that's making sure that there is going to be some sort of audio, like text to speech for our students? So can it be read, or is it something they can read, or is it something they're listening to? We need to be really careful about how we're presenting those things to our students. And then finally, can your lesson be a physical visit somewhere? It's always so much more fun to get out and go somewhere and see people and engage with them. And so, for example, are you going to be visiting your school-based health center if you have one? So, you know, just one thing to plan though, if you are going on a physical visit, you need to make sure you're planning your route, making sure that your route is accessible. giving your students plenty of heads up that you're going to be doing that, or that you're going to have a visitor come to your classroom and speak. And sometimes it's really helpful to have the speaker that you're going to visit come in ahead of time and meet your students so that they can meet them in a space where they feel comfortable and they feel safe. So I guess, could I get like 1 or 2 suggestions from the audience as well, if there are any sort of instructional materials that you have? It looks like Catherine was saying, I have a lot of, there are a lot of great resources. Yeah, understood. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I know I'm cutting over to the chat for a moment, but understood is on our list of referrals and things to check out. Are there any ideas from folks about examples of things that you've used in the classroom with instructional materials? We can always go back through the chat and pull some if there are some. Thank you. So just a little sidebar here, visual representation matters, right? We know this. I mentioned this in the last slide. It's sorely lacking in all mediums, right? Youth with disabilities, other intersecting identities, they're not present. I mean, in the mainstream, they're not present. And we need to be able to, Rachel just let me know folks that can't come off mute. I'm sorry for putting people on the spot like that. Thank you. So just back to the representation. There's a server or an area that you can get different pictures from called Creative Commons. And Creative Commons is basically a place where you go where there aren't copyright rules that are in the same way that a lot of mainstream pictures are. So you can go to Creative Commons and you can credit them, like this picture. If you look at your screen, you'll be able to see you credit in different ways, but you can actually go to this website with this QR code. This is Gender Spectrum. It's from vice.com. They update their content. So there were some pictures I really liked that are not there anymore. So if you do like something, please do yourself a favor and save it. So if folks have other ideas for great places to go and look, please definitely throw them in the chat. I think it could be really, really helpful. And then there's a second website that I have here for you to check out, and it's called pexels.com. So, and I've just made little notes above each of these pictures, things to be aware of. So this first one that you're looking at, it has queer youth and trans youth visually that are represented that way, but it definitely lacks people with visible disabilities. And then this next slide that you'll see, it has youth with disabilities, but it definitely lacks youth of color and youth that are visibly queer. And I just saw that Anna put, I use social stories, and yes, this is fabulous. That is another wonderful tool. If folks have time to Google what a social story is, it's very helpful and it's wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a little scenario around teaching methods and classroom management. And I'm going to request that people type some responses in the chat. We're going to answer, get a few ideas from you all. So I'm going to read this scenario to you out loud. And then what I'd really love is for folks to give some feedback on what issues could arise for students from someone giving directions like this. Okay, so the scenario here is, now quickly find a partner and read through the role play, write down your answers, and come back to the full group. You have 6 minutes. So if I were to give directions like that to a class, can people write in the chat some things that could be problematic about this? Yep, multiple step directions, too many directions at once, not enough time. They may not feel confident finding a partner on their own, way too many steps, time limitation, time limit. Yes, finding a partner. There's some other things in here as well. Yeah, oh my God, anxiety. Yes. I mean, just writing this, I felt like my anxiety was peaking. Quickly definitely makes people nervous. Yeah, so there were a few things that I found in here. One of them is when you're using the word quickly, are you thinking about your students that physically have to navigate your classroom? Do you have a room that's set up where that would even be possible for all of your students, right? There are too many directions at once. All of the directions are oral. There was no way that you wrote directions on the board. There was no way that you were modeling something to students, right? The time constraint is definitely going to cause anxiety. Yes, the forced participation that Jessica just mentioned, thank you. And then, one thing that can be very helpful for a lot of students who have trouble managing their time or keeping track of time is to actually have a clock on your board. There are different apps you can download with a countdown, and it will actually do a countdown for students. So if they're curious and they can't keep track and it's like, oh my God, how much time has passed? They can look to the board and there's management of time up there for them to see how much time they have left. Okay. So one sort of continuation of this is how are you going to rebound from potential activating content, or how are you going to manage energy levels when people are getting really hyped up and don't know how to, expend their energy? We have two tools that we can lean on. So there are brain breaks and there are also movement breaks that are really, really wonderful. So here I have two QR codes for you to use, but if you don't feel like, you're at a restaurant looking up the menu, if you'd like to wait until the end of the presentation, we'll be sending you a document that has all of these listed. But these are two really great options that I use in my classrooms. The first one is specifically for students with autism spectrum disorder. And then the second one is sort of a mindfulness, calming, breathing activity. Yes, Cosmic King Yoga is very good for movement. So that, Carissa, you just went into my next piece. Structured movement is so important. It's so wonderful to have a time to break out and go either for a turn around a track, if that's an option, through the halls, as long as things are accessible and safe for your students. And then this picture on the left, you can see this is a tool that I highly recommend you get for your classroom if you can. You're able to open and close it, and you can sync this with breathing with your class. And it's a wonderful visual to breathe in and breathe out. And it's also a really great opportunity to bring in instruments as well. Sometimes I have a teacher I work with who has really fabulous, has like a triangle or a gong or something, that makes a sound that you can do each time you take a breath. And you can involve your students as well with that. Okay, the final piece of UDL is assessments. And if you're a teacher, I'm sure this is like the word we all dread, right? Assessments. So students show their mastery of skills and topics in many different ways, right? How we were talking before. It's up to us to help them show their mastery. Not everyone is going to take tests well. Not everyone is good at presenting in front of a class. So mastery can be shown in a number of different ways, and it's up to us to make it flexible and expansive for our students, right? So these little bubbles on the screen here can kind of give you some ideas. So is it a one-on-one conversation with a teacher or a trusted staff member that student feels comfortable with? Is it a PowerPoint that a student can present if they're nonverbal? Maybe they feel more comfortable displaying images and words to express themselves. Or maybe it's drawings. For our students who have different literacy levels, drawings are sometimes very effective and wonderful ways to express mastery or understanding of different topics. All right, so how to make text and images accessible. We have got a few slides coming up that we're going to go over just to talk about different ways that you can do this. So let's start with a couple of the basics. Font size has always got to be 16. It needs to be 16 on presentations or on paper, however you're presenting it. And that's a minimum of 16. So I've showed you an example of what 12 would look like on a presentation and what 16 looks like, just so you can imagine that. Sans serif fonts are always great go-tos. If you look here, I have the name of the font as well as it in the font that it's listed at. So these are some ideas for fonts. Another consideration is, are your students colorblind? Do they have color blindness? 1 in 20 people do have a form of color blindness. So for students that experience color blindness, we need to make sure we're choosing color combinations that have stark contrast. So on the left, we have 4 columns. The farthest left column of those 4 shows you what this color would look like to somebody who does not have any form of color blindness. The other 3 columns demonstrate what those colors look like to the 3 types of color blindness. So you can see how different it looks. So on the right, you can also see how difficult it would be for somebody who's colorblind and has blue, green and red, which I'm wearing today, and to differentiate between them. So other color combinations that you want to avoid, and before I list this off, because I don't want folks to get overwhelmed, you can Google this, and this is pretty accessible online. You want to avoid green and brown, green and blue, blue and gray, blue and purple, green and gray, green and black, and light green and yellow. So I apologize. I know I just listed those off, but those are definitely available for you online. And this next slide I have actually shows you some recommended color palettes that could be helpful. And you can also use symbols. Symbols are a really great way to show folks. So if you're looking at a graph, you can have like a star will be one color and it will be in the graph. And then it can also be linked on the actual bar graph. So your key or your legend will have the image on it, but it will also be linked to the image on the actual bar graph. So if people are having a hard time seeing those colors, they're able to see those images and link that up. And happily, a lot of other different sites have colorblind settings now. A lot of games have them. PowerPoint has them. So you can just go and search for PowerPoint slide decks that are done in colorblind coloring. So students that are hard of hearing and or deaf. So I've begun to become hard of hearing, but I am not a deaf person and I don't have as much experience in this realm. So I just wanted to offer a few suggestions that have been helpful for myself. Closed captions, always use closed captions in your class. If you're playing a video in your class, make sure that your tech is loud enough for everybody to be able to hear it. Test it out before. And for classwork, don't assign anything that you can't also read. So don't assign to someone to listen to a podcast for an assignment without making sure that there's also a transcript of that podcast available for your students. And finally, what Bea mentioned, and I'm so grateful that they did, is that for people that are hard of hearing, it's very helpful to read mouths. So if you're writing on the board and talking and not facing your students, it could be difficult for some of your students to understand what you're saying or to hear you. And so facing your students while you're talking to them, it seems very simple, and it's actually very hard. And then again, wearing masks has made that hard. I want to acknowledge that. COVID has made it very, very difficult for that. Okay, so just a last little section for you all. How do I use Amaze in my lessons? So there are a number of reasons I love them. I am a huge Amaze fan. So the videos are made for all ages and all audiences. So you can find something that best fits your class. They're more complex topics that can be discussed in a way that isn't going to infantilize your audience. You can use closed captioning. We all know now I'm a big fan of that. And the videos are bite-sized. So they're short enough that if you do need to play it a second time, I often get asked that a lot in class. You can play it a second time and it will be okay. And then they break up content in a way that's, they break it up in a way that's interesting. You have a video here and there. That way you're moving from different activities and students can see something on the screen and listen. They can work on an activity. They can have a lecture. It's a very nice way to round out a lesson. And in my experience, if you're looking for videos for certain topics that really seem to be a hit, anatomy, periods, gender, and sexual identity have been the biggest hit when it comes to that. So there are a few things to also be aware of, not just with Amaze videos, but in general, some things to be aware of when you do choose your videos. For some students, particularly students with autism spectrum disorder, understanding double meanings or double entendres is going to be really difficult. So view it with that perspective and find content that's going to be straightforward for your students and avoid things that might have multiple meanings. And not all Amaze videos are going to be a good fit for this. There is a lot of wonderful humor in some of these videos, but sometimes it's just not going to line up with your students. For students who have strong reactions to sounds, make sure that you're listening to the video as you listen to it before you show it to them to see if there's anything that might be activating for your student. And then, like I said before, just make time for your students to see the video a second time if they would like. And so what this means is you might have to just choose shorter videos, and that's just the nature of it. But luckily, Amaze videos come in very, very nice bite-sized lengths. So the other thing I would say also is if you are showing a longer video, take time to pause throughout and find where you will pause it before you teach class. Don't just pause it when you think it's a good moment. Go through ahead and find a moment to pause and think about ways to have your students reflect back to you what they've learned and if they're understanding the video, or if you just need to keep starting it over a couple of times to go over it. So this next slide that I have for you will show you, these are just the videos that I show for the sex ed lesson that we've developed for who I am and who I like. So I have a document that we're going to drop in the chat for you, and I have all of our sex ed lessons that I've developed with a couple other folks, and I'll talk about that in a moment. I've found different videos to go with it. So this list will actually show you all of the videos that I've curated for each of those subject areas and the ones that I think, well, at least for my classes, have been the best fit. So please feel free to take a look at it and see if any of those would be helpful for you. And you might notice that these are all shorter videos. So they're all under 4 minutes, and my preference is usually 2 minutes or shorter. So now a couple last things for you. We have a wonderful curricula to get you started. We have a couple options. So if you use this, either this QR code, or you can use the resource list that we'll give you at the end here. This is an IDD informed version of sex ed of the 3 R's that our district, Portland Public Schools, has created. So we did this with a panel of teachers. We also had a review panel of students with disabilities, and a lot of input from an organization called the Center for Sexuality that's based in Calgary, Canada. And these lessons also include a lesson to your school-based health center, or if you don't have one, it also has an option for schools without. Oh, you need, yeah, so just a note, the reason it says we need access is we've had a lot of political stuff going on within our district. So I will definitely give you access, usually just within a couple hours of getting the request from you. So I'll send it to you, but that's why. We've been on Fox News a couple of times. So, and so if you also look to the right, I have a screenshot of the front page of this document, but Advocates has put together this incredible teacher guide supplement. So that will also be on the resource list. And you're going to find information in here that's going to talk about UDL, different ways to make your learning modalities accessible, like videos, movement-based activities, and even condom demonstrations, our favorite, yay. And finally, there are 3 pages at the very end that are packed with really, really great ideas for ways to make lessons in different grades, K through 12, more inclusive for students with different types of disabilities. And then just a final option for you all if you're interested. So in 2021, I worked with the Center for Sexuality that's based in Calgary, Canada, to create a deck of slides that cover sexual health topics for students with IDD. And we very quickly discovered that many of the intensive services classroom teachers had not been endorsed in health. And we're so uncomfortable teaching sex ed. So over the summer of 2022, I crosswalked several different curricula that are out there for different IDD audiences. And so that's including content that was designed for students with high and low incidence disabilities, as well as content that focused on students with ASD or autism spectrum disorder. And then a local curricula that we've been using out of Alaska called Friendships and Dating. So the result of that was 12 lessons designed for students with varying disabilities, but more so for high incidence disabilities. But it can definitely be adapted for low incidence disabilities. It's completely open source. I'm working to get it all organized so I can share it out with whoever would like it. And we will have that again on the resource document. And so that is open to anybody who would like it and would like to use any of the lessons. I've written lesson plans. We have slides, speakers notes, and activities, all designed for students with disabilities. So I crosswalked all those different pieces and have that available to folks if they'd like it. So please just fill out the Google form and I will share it with you if you would like it. It would be my honor. So thank you so much. I know that we covered so much, but I'm so grateful to you all for being here and so grateful to Advocates and Amaze for letting me speak and share space with all of you. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Lexie. I think that I could speak for everyone and say that everything you have shared today has just been really helpful. I've seen so many moments in the chat where people were just like, wow, I never thought about this. I have to go back and change some lessons, or this is really helpful. You also answered questions while you were going through your presentation. So I'm just really grateful that we had you here to follow our great panel. And I just wanted to remind everyone that all of our slides and presentations will be public. So we will share these resources, especially Lexie's slide that has the QR codes. So we will not, we will definitely give you all the information that you need and have requested. We got you covered. But once again, I just want to thank you, Lexie. The work that you do is amazing, and I'm really proud to have you as someone that we can lean on and gain information from.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now I'd like to turn it back to Dr. Rachel to guide us through the rest of our time together tonight.
Thank you so much, Victoria, and thank you, Lexie. Every time, I've seen this parts of this presentation, and every time I look at it, I learn something new. So thank you so much for that. So I want to share some things that actually Amaze is doing around disability and sexuality videos. We actually already have one video that talks about the topic, and we're going to drop that link in the chat so folks can watch it at your leisure. But we actually are in the production stages right now of another video about protecting the, sorry, I'm reading two things at once, about supporting the sexual health and rights of young people with disabilities. So that is going to be coming out in early 2023, and we're really looking forward to that. And it's one of those videos that it's taken us a little longer than normal because we really want to make sure that we get it right. And so be on the lookout for that in the coming months. And we also have a whole bunch of other videos coming out. If we want to go to the next slide. So just dropped today is our newest video, Pimples and Periods, a Puberty Guide. So you can check that out on our website and our YouTube channel. We're so excited about it. Just another great video about puberty to add to our collection. So please check that out. It did drop today. And of course, if you go to on our website, you'll find the more info section, which includes tips for young people, tips for parents and families and caregivers, and then also teaching tips, which includes lesson plans and other resources and discussion questions. So definitely check it out over on our website. We also, in December, will be releasing another video about how birth control pills work. So check that out as well. And then coming early January 2023, we're super excited. We're going to be launching an endometriosis video, a video about adoption, and a video about menopause. And those are just the first few months. So we have a lot in store for 2023. And so I hope everyone subscribes to our newsletter. That's where all the newest videos will come out, where you'll hear about all of our resources. We're also going to be relaunching our educator talks in 2023. And so what we'll do is we'll have some of our lead educators, our educator ambassadors from the field, doing monthly chats about different topics relating to sex and Amaze. And of course, they'll be free and virtual. So subscribe to our newsletter so you know when all these great happenings are going to occur. A lot to come for Amaze in 2023. So I want to give some thank yous before we close our session tonight. Amaze is a very large team. You've only seen a few of us today on the screen. So first, I want to thank my co-hosts for the conference, Victoria and Lakara. You all were amazing. Your energy, it's so great always to feedback, to kind of just chat and talk about things live with you both. So I really appreciate you both coming on and supporting and co-hosting with me. Such a great time. I also want to thank our co-producers, Angela and Shirley. They're behind the scenes. You can't see them, but they're the ones flipping the slides and making sure our sound works and sharing all the things in the chat. And without them, y'all, I would be lost. So I really want to give a big up to both of our co-producers this time. I also want to give a shout out to our tech folks, Paul and Ben, answering all the things, helping all the issues with all of the tech that invariably happens when we're doing online things. You know, I really also want to give big shout out to advocates and Nora and Deb and Emily for this amazing support, as well as the Westwind Foundation. You know, it's all of your leadership and your vision that really makes the Amaze project possible. And really, it's your vision and leadership that has really helped so many young people around the world. And being part of this global partnership is such an awesome team to be on. So if you're ever interested, check out our team. If someone can drop that link in the chat to our team page to see everyone that works on Amaze, because it isn't just the three of us that you've seen here. It's a great team. We even have a whole international team that works globally. So thank you to everyone for that. And last, but certainly not least, I would like to thank all of you that came today or all 3 days to joining us virtually for Sex EdCon 2022. You are all the ones that are doing this great work in your communities with young people, spreading Amaze around, not only here in the US, but globally. And we appreciate your work. And we hope that we just can continue to support your work as we go throughout this journey and the inevitable challenges that come with it. We've actually already started planning next year's conference. So of course, we want to hear back from you about how we can make next year's conference better. So we have evaluations, because who doesn't love a good evaluation and a good Google form, y'all? So if you go ahead and we can go to the next slide. Thank you so much. You will be getting a link to the evaluation in the chat, as well as I'll send it in our follow-up email tonight. Please fill out those evals. We read every piece of feedback that we get, whether it's Victoria monitoring all our socials to see what people say, to Shirley monitoring all our emails. We read everything, and these evals are so important to us because this conference is for you all, and everything we do is for you. So we want to make sure that we're really connecting with everything that you are interested in. So please fill out that evaluation. Tell us what we can do better. Tell us what you want to see for next year. And then, of course, you'll get a certificate of participation. That is very cute. Who doesn't love a certificate after a Google form? So make sure to fill that out for us. And so we can make sure that everything that comes down in 2023 is everything that you need. And I'll pass it back to Victoria to close us out.
Thank you so much, Rachel. So now I have the opportunity of announcing our day 1 and day 2 winners of some prizes. So I'm not announcing what prizes you've won yet, but I'm just going to announce who has won some prizes. I wish I had some Prices Right or like Family Feud or music that's going on in the background. So first, I'd like to start off our winner with Savannah Lindsay. If you are here, you can throw a little shout out in the chat for yourself. And then we have Amber Mallory. We have Sarah Axelson, Jacqueline R. Wilkie. And those are our day one winners. So congratulations. And then I'll move along to our day two winners. Okay, I see you all popping up in the chat. Hey. So then our day two winners, we have Alicia Amin, Catherine Swift, Heather Alberta, Sarah Cucuzzo, Aviva Friedman, Alvera DeBrick, Wendy Ramsey, and Murphy Bellmeyer. Sorry about that. And congratulations. I see you all in the chat. I hope you all are as happy as we are to give away these amazing prizes for you all. And there's still an opportunity for day three winners to be picked. So we just appreciate everyone's participation so far. And thank you for sticking with us and just being such great participants. And I'll pass it off back to Rachel. Oh, actually,
Thank
it
you
is
so much,
me.
Victoria. Yeah, go ahead. All you.
End of 3-day conference brain. So I know you all have been asking how to stay involved and how to make sure that you aren't missing anything that Amaze does, or just really connecting with this community that we've created. So the first step is that you all should be subscribed for our newsletter if you aren't already subscribed. So you can go to amaze.org/subscribe, and you have the option to pick on which newsletter you would like to subscribe for. And then you can follow us on our socials. So on Instagram and on Facebook, we are Amaze Parents. And then our international team has an Instagram that's Amaze International if you are interested in seeing the wonderful work they do over there as well. And then you can find us on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube at Amaze.org. And then if you ever have any questions or any suggestions or any feedback, feel free to email us at info@amaze.org. And now I'll pass it back to Rachel.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you again for everyone for coming. We'll be publishing all of the videos from the conference in the coming weeks, as well as sharing out all of the resources. So if you missed something in the chat or you missed something in the presentation, don't worry, we're even going to share the slides. So everything will be at your fingertips. Thank you so much. Please fill out the evaluations, and we will see you next fall for Amaze Sex EdCon 2023. Thank you everyone for coming. Have a great evening or afternoon or wherever you are in the world. Bye now.
Bye. Thank you so much.